it's funny. I met one of my best friend's girlfriends last week, and she was asking me, like, personal questions. And he's like, wait, I haven't heard you say any of these things. And I was like, sometimes it's easier to like talk about these things with a complete stranger than it is with your best friend. And
It's so true. It's so true. I mean, that's the beauty of like what we're hoping to do here is hopefully you'll just be like, hey, I don't know you. Why not?
Lovely you.
So, Gabe, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me here.
Cool. So we're just going to basically get to know each other a little bit, get to know you a little bit more. But before we dive into that, I know Eligible In is relatively new, but how did you feel when you were nominated for this by your colleague, Abby? Tell us a little bit about your friendship with her before we kind of dive in and get to know you a little more.
Yeah. So Abby, so we've worked together for, I think, 2 years now, more than 2 years. And in the Fire Crucible, it is like a really small company where everything we do is really close to each other. And I mean, she's fantastic. I think that especially at a really small company, you want everybody you're working with to crush it, and you need everybody you're working with to crush it. And just like, she's one of those people that like knowing you have someone like her at the company just makes you feel better about the future of the company and where we're going. And so, we've been really close since we started. And, she lives in Seattle, so not in the same place, but pretty confident if we were in the same city, we'd be really good friends. But overall, just get along and work well together. And she nominated me. I think she's friends with Renee, so I brought that through. And honestly, I'm curious. I love what y'all are doing, and happy both to be a part of it and to do anything I can to support what you're doing as well, especially as someone who's been through that really early stage myself in the last couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. And I caught a y'all in there. So I know where you're from originally, but can you tell us a little bit about where you're from?
Yeah, so I grew up in Austin, Texas, and I was born in Houston. From all the meaningful time from I think 4 to 18, I was in Austin. Not really the true South. I can get into the y'all thing in a second, actually. But through 18, I went to the University of Michigan, kind of got out and wanted to be a little far from home, find myself somewhere else. And University of Texas was 10 minutes from home, and I don't think I really would have had the same college experience if I'd gone there. So went out there. It was great to get away, and it kind of opened things up when I was looking for a job out of college. I was pretty happy to go anywhere, and I ended up in Northern Virginia and DC suburbs. So I was there for 6 years until I took the job here at the fintech in LA, and I moved over 2 years, almost exactly 2 years ago.
I feel like people who sort of want to experience something different than where they grew up somehow usually end up in LA. Not to say that people that don't, you can live anywhere and experience something other than where you grew up, but I had a really similar experience, moving around a lot. So I relate a lot to that journey. But so Austin, Michigan, Ann Arbor, right? Then DC, then LA, obviously all very different, very, very different places to live. Do you have, it's kind of annoying when because I feel like people ask me this too, but do you have a favorite, or is there a place that you feel really resonates with you? And in terms of the culture has been your favorite place that you feel just really fit, or you're still kind of feeling LA out?
I've really liked all 4 cities in their own way, and I don't want to cop out at this question. I think that to some extent, LA is both overwhelmingly big for me. I think that Austin's not a small city in any sense. Neither is DC, but LA is just grand and huge. From if you go up on Mount Hollywood and you're looking out, you're like, wow, this just goes on forever and everywhere. But I think as far as a city goes, LA is probably the coolest place I've lived in. I think there's so much
Mm-hmm.
going on. I think it's just you're waking up and you see the beach and the mountains at the same time, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot going on, lots of good food and cool and interesting people. So I've liked that a lot. I think there's a lot that goes into a city between the people you know there, and certainly have people I love and miss in all the other places. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, but as a pure city, I think LA is really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I'm biased, but I agree. LA is pretty awesome, and agreed that it's so vast, especially being only a couple years into living there. Like, I mean, I lived there for a long time, and even then, I feel like I didn't even scratch the surface. It's just so overwhelming. But in your time there, have you found? Because I found that LA has, different pockets that all have really different personalities. Have you found like some spots in LA that you kind of gravitate towards or you enjoy spending the most time in?
Yes, like I've lived in the west side near the ocean my whole time here. I moved kind of Mar Vista near Venice Beach, and I live in Culver City now. That's the area I like more. It's cooler or generally more temperate depending on the season. I
Mm-hmm.
love running on the beach and being out there, and it feels maybe a little smaller in this area. I think when you go downtown, it's some really cool. Like, West Hollywood's really cool. Cape Town's really cool. You get some really cool
Mm-hmm.
food and places, and in some sense, I kind of think of that as the places I go when people come visit me, and you're
Yeah,
like,
I
all
feel like the
right,
LA when people visit and the LA like of your day to day is usually pretty different,
oh,
right?
so
Like,
different. And it's wild when you're like, at the end of the weekend, I'm like, damn, I'm filling up my car for the second time in one weekend, and I haven't even left LA. Like, how is this
right,
happening?
right.
And
I know. Oh,
yeah, once you have those paths and you go out a few places,
yeah.
it's a bit of a journey.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I used to take people up to Malibu every time they came to visit to show it off, and people are like, "Do you do this every weekend?" And I was like, "No, I only do it when people are in town. This is not my day to day at all."
Yeah,
But it's nice
yeah.
that it's there.
I have a soft spot for Malibu as well. I had a friend here last June actually, and they came to stay with me. And they're two of my best friends from DC. And
Hmm.
before it came, the guy told me, "Hey, by the way, I'm going to propose while I'm here in LA. Like, can you help me
Oh my
pick a
god.
spot?" And I was like, "Oh man, that's a lot. Like, I've been here a year. I got to pick the
Yeah,
right
no
spot."
pressure.
I know. Anyway, we settled on Malibu Beach, and
Yeah.
so we went out there and we're walking, and you know, me and the other friend kind of dropped back a little bit. We had our phones ready. Everyone knew what was coming except her, and we we were just chatting and waiting, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, it's happening!" And so sit there and I don't know, seeing your friends get engaged and that was cool. And so yeah, soft spot to Malibu, love that place. Love
Yeah. I
that
mean, well,
place.
that's a good choice. Like that is a lot of pressure, especially not having lived there that long, but you really cannot go wrong with Malibu as long as the weather cooperates, which usually it does, but you never know.
Yeah, weather always cooperates here, right?
Yeah, I
So,
was gonna say, what am I talking about? It always cooperates. But that's actually a really good segue into I want to get to know you, but also why we're here is to talk a little bit about dating and sort
sure.
of what you're looking for. I think just curious, especially given the different places you've lived. What would you say is like the difference between the dating scenes in each of the places you've lived, but especially between the East Coast and the West Coast that you've
Yeah.
noticed so far? I know it's still early, but
Well, so I mean, definitely the people you meet are very different. I think in the DC area, going out on dates, I think people were doing one of a few different things. Either were government, consulting, lawyers. I think that's
hmm
like, I think I've just gone on the same date 5 times in a row
yeah,
in some sense over the course. And I think sometimes the dating apps do that as well to you, where you start being given the same person over and over again.
hmm
And, but which, I joked with a friend. It's like, wow, I think I've gone out with 5 vegans in a row. I don't know how that happened, but like, it just nothing
algorithm.
else. Yeah, nothing one way or the next. I was just like, of course, is that yeah.
Yeah.
Where LA, there's a really big variety, I think, of different
hmm
things. Where I've met people going and who are in like a startup or a fintech like me. I've met people who are working, you know, people anything from like Netflix, Facebook. Someone was working on one of the Kardashians like influencer campaigns or something like that. I was like, whoa, like really? Like that's what you're doing? And costume designer. And there's like it's a different thing, and probably people who are more different from me, which is cool. I think that, you know, I have to almost remember that I'm on a date and not just like, wow, tell me about your life and all the interesting things that you're doing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it does attract like a very wide variety of people and creatives. I'm sure you're not meeting people like working for the Kardashians or working with the Kardashians in DC. So that's cool. And do you find it, I mean, and this applies to both dating and just like making friends, because, you know, we talked about how vast of a city it is and there's all these different neighborhoods and places you can spend time. So in terms of both making friends, but also like meeting people to go out with, what have you found to be the best way to like meet good friends or meet people to go out with? It's kind of a double pronged question, but just curious how that's been for you in a city like LA.
Yeah. I think friends, it's been like a couple of different things and a couple of different things. Some things I've tried, and part of it's just like reconnecting with different people from different like other parts of my life that maybe were friends or that I hadn't talked to in a while, and maybe and that I saw moved here, or like family friends or that sort of thing, or even relatives. I think that one of the cool things about moving to a big city is there's always someone who knows someone who like lives there, and connecting, which it can be a little challenging at some point, especially that whole, oh yeah, let's go get lunch and like, let's be friends. You know, there's no like natural, like, I was in there going on like a guy date with someone else, and that I go like, all right, wait, what do we do next?
It's like, are you going to call me? Or?
Yeah. And that sort of thing. I think, so that's been like, I've done some other things, joined a flag football team. It's something I did in DC, honestly, and nice people there. I think, you know, first time I went, we played the game. It was Sunday afternoon, and everyone was like, I was like, all right, so we're going to get a drink. We like hanging out. I'm like, oh, maybe next week. Like, we're all going home.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay.
And I want to make friends.
Yeah, I was like, oh yeah, all right. So that one was a bit of a miss, but I don't know. On that side, so like I get that kind of thing, and then through work as well, and hanging out and friends of friends, which has been good. I think it's hard at a small company because again, we work so closely together, and everything we do is, I don't know, just like such a big part of the company that it's hard to then hang out and and talk about non-work. You know, you end up just venting about work or something like that.
Right. It's just the extended work day.
Yeah. Dating, I've only really dated through apps here. It's, I guess, a combination of going out through apps and meeting people, and also that, again, family friend, oh, like, you know, my niece lives here, or like my friend lives here, and I'm like, is this a date? Is it not a date? I don't really know.
Like, just meet up and see what happens.
Yeah. And then, but then I'm always stuck at the end of the conversation going like, okay, like I liked the person, I'd hang out with them again. I don't know, like, again, am I saying like, do you want to go out again? Is it date? I don't know. And so
yeah.
Sometimes,
so still navigating it a little bit. But,
a little bit, I'd say, yeah.
But I mean, it sounds like you're getting out there. I feel like joining as an adult, like, period, it just seems to be hard to make new friends in a new city. So like putting yourself out there and playing flag football, like that's great. I mean, hopefully eventually they'll like want to do something after flag football. But
Yeah.
Like, come on, that's half the reason anyone plays sports these days. Is like
Exactly. I mean, I think you think in like all the times, you know, in some sense college was so easy because everyone was in the same place. But beyond that, it's, you know, you're taking that step beyond that made you a little bit uncomfortable, and you're like, all right, wait, I'm going to go do this. And most of the time, you never regret taking that step and going and doing something, and going and talking to somebody or jumping into something and just seeing how it goes. And so,
So, I mean, this is kind of a loaded question, but I'm just going to throw it out there.
Sure.
Based on living in, all the different places that you have, and again, you're still relatively new to LA, but do you have like a vision for where you'd like to end up one day or settle down, or are you still kind of feeling that out?
I think one of the cool things about having lived in a lot of places and having essentially started over, I didn't know anyone in Michigan. I knew like one or two people in DC. I didn't know anybody except my colleagues moving here. Is that I feel like I can do anything and go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also a little over starting over in some sense.
Yeah.
And like, I'm 30 now and I'm not excited about moving to a city again where I know nobody. I know I can if like that right work experience pops up or some other thing in my life makes me say like, New York's the next city, like let's go ahead over there. And I'm like, oh man, another like big new city, start over. I know I can. But I think whether it's staying in LA and, I'll be here as long as I'm with the company and maybe beyond that as well, I'd like to see it out and see where the journey goes in LA, or moving somewhere else. I feel pretty confident I could be happy in a lot of places.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is something not a lot of people can say. So that's a really great quality, and kind of more exciting to be like, will I stay in LA? Will I end up somewhere else? And just kind of see what happens. So that's awesome. Cool. Well, so you mentioned your parents, they're still in Austin. Do you have siblings? And if so, where are they these days?
I have one younger brother. He's only 13 months younger. So
oh, wow. Okay.
Pretty much at this point, just think of him as more of a brother than a younger brother, but he's also in Austin and he's with them. And so it's nice. I get to see him every time I go back home. I see my brother as well, which is cool.
Yeah.
Last time I actually spent a night at his apartment, which was cool, and some time away from the parents and just brother and brother.
Yeah.
But
that's awesome.
Yeah, no, we've always been close and done the same things, gone to the same schools. He didn't go, Michigan. He didn't go. He did his different U of M at Miami, so maybe it says a little bit about the difference between the two of us in that regard. But
yeah, I was gonna say Miami. I'm assuming you don't mean the Miami that's in Ohio, right? Miami,
no, I do mean the Florida
you
one.
Mean Miami. Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say Michigan and Miami, very, very different. But
yeah, I know. I think we're different people, but we love each other. And
that's all that counts. That's all that matters.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's awesome. And so have they been out to visit you, like out in LA?
Yeah, they've come a couple of times. Both, I think my dad helped me move to my first place here when I was first moving out. My mom helped me move into this place. It's just, which has been fun. It's actually really nice. I ran the LA Marathon a few months ago, and they came up to like be on the sidelines and support, which I was really grateful for. I didn't realize how grateful I was going to be for it until they came up, and I don't know, just having them there and celebrating with them is something.
That's awesome. I'm so glad they could be out there because that is a huge, huge accomplishment. I mean, was that your first marathon? Or
It was my first marathon.
Oh my gosh. Congrats. That's huge.
Thanks. No, thanks. And for something like that, it's just, I don't know. I guess the way I say is like, you do something like that for you, right? Like, to show yourself you can do it, to accomplish it. But like being able to share it with people who love you, your parents, your best friends, makes it so much better. And so,
yeah. I mean, because it would have felt amazing no matter what. But to have those people that mean so much to you, like waiting at the finish line, cheering you on the way. I mean, that had to have been like so incredible. Yeah. I personally hate running, so that's why I was like, oh my God. I mean, it's an amazing accomplishment no matter what, but especially for me, I'm like, can barely run a mile. So I'm like always very impressed when I hear people do anything like that. So that's amazing. And do you like to run? I know you had mentioned like you love hiking. Have you found some good like trails around LA that you kind of favor, or where do you tend to go?
Yeah, I've got my run spots near me, kind of just on the creek, on the beach, a couple different directions. And then hiking, definitely some places in LA. I mean, again, it's so interesting where you in this big city and you just find a mountain or valley or whatever that you're going. I love Los Leones up in the Palisades. I don't know if you ever went up there.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And it's like right there. You're just like, all of a sudden you're like, how is this 5 minutes for me? I'm all of a sudden in the mountains. It's so cool.
Oh, it's funny because you're up there with all the mansions, like really like the $30 million houses. And so I go, I sit there, park and get out of my hiking boots and like walking past these like you know,
Like beautiful homes.
most beautiful homes you'll ever see. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just going on my hike up here, and it's like not the only one.
Sweating. Yeah.
That's a cool place. And yeah, I've done something in the area as well.
Hmm.
I went with some of my colleagues and did Mount Baldy last summer, which that was
Nice.
hard. That was quite hard, but we had fun.
Where is that? Is that in LA, or did you have to drive a little ways?
It's like Claremont, so
Okay.
an hour and a half east or so. And so,
Okay.
yeah, one day thing, left early, and
Yeah, got back in time to pass out.
exactly. I was kind of on the edge of some heat exhaustion by the end of
Yeah.
it. It had its
Also heat
challenge.
exhaustion, but otherwise worth it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what else have you, obviously it sounds like you're really active, but are there other things that you like to do? I know you mentioned all the great restaurants in LA. Are there like favorites of yours that you tend to go to? Any particular ones that are like the place you take your first date? Like, want to hear a little bit more about your food journey in LA?
I think my favorite restaurant I've been to so far is a place called Kobe's in Santa Monica.
Yes,
Did
I
you
love
ever
that
go?
place.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Funny, when I went the first time, I thought that it had just opened because I tried to go with my boss after work to, hey, I heard this place was good. And they're like, yeah, we don't have any reservations, like nothing. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it's got to be new. And then I was like, wait, it's been around for 2 years. It's still like this. And so this is, I'm not good at picking favorite restaurants, or there's a lot, and depending on what you feel like, you kind of have different things, but that's
Right.
certainly a go-to place. I don't know. It just like love some of the Jewish delis here, love a good sandwich, Italian food. I mean, I eat everything and I like it all. And so,
Yeah. I'm sorry. That is such a loaded question, especially because I feel like LA has like any kind of food you want, you can get an amazing version of it. Like they've made amazing like Asian food, amazing Italian food, amazing like Mediterranean food. It's just, yeah, it's a tough question. So thanks for taking a stab at it.
Yeah, no, and it's funny when you have people come visit you, and especially like, I've got a friend of mine who's Iranian, and he really wants to go to the Persian restaurants in LA, and a friend who's Korean and wants to go to K-Town and have the Korean food there. And you're like, okay, do we go to these places? Do we not go to these places? Like,
Yeah.
let them bleed a little bit, but it's like the best you'll ever have in some of the things. And so,
yeah, it's kind of overwhelming, but amazing at the same time. Take it as someone who does not live there anymore. I really miss that about LA. You cannot get that everywhere. So.
Yeah, pretty much whatever you want to go find and whatever you're feeling like on a given day, it's all right there.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I love Kobe's. I went there. I was after I moved away, but went back to visit friends, and we went there. And I think the only way we got a reservation is because we went at like 5 p.m., like right when they opened, or went at a really weird time because it was the only way we could get there, but it was so worth it. It was so good.
No, it's exactly. You're either going to plan ahead or be willing to go at like 5 or 10 or something like that. Or...
Yeah, exactly. Either super early or super late, and no in between.
Yeah. But and you said like other things as well and stuff. I mean, and for me, I don't know. I love to play games. I think it's fun. I love to play board games and card games and that sort of thing with people. You get a bottle of wine out, and I think depending on the people, I could go like serious and strategy and whatever, or I could go just fun and goofy, and it's something that just gets you laughing and joking.
Yeah. So what are some of your favorites? Because I feel like the board game world is very vast. So I'm curious, like, what are your favorite strategy games? What are your favorite like fun, just kind of
so fun group games right now. Sure, I played some good games with Codenames this past weekend, which were fun. Wavelength I've been playing recently. I don't know if you know that one. That's another fun one. I hesitate with the name sometimes. I don't know if you know Secret Hitler, but like that's the one that someone sent me a reel about like this weekend about someone trying to buy Secret Hitler in a board game store, and everybody like looking at him like he's like the worst person in the world. But it's like Resistance or Mafia or that sort of thing.
Okay.
It's fun. Enjoyed that a lot. And on the strategy side, well, then like There's a game, Terraforming Mars, I like. I'm a big sci-fi nerd as well sometimes, and so that's both fun
Oh,
from the game
nice.
standpoint and from like what you're doing. Always will play a good game of Catan or Ticket to Ride, and pretty much
Nice.
anything else that you find you bring out on a given day. So I like to say that there's the people who they say they don't like games, but really you find a good, fun, casual game and they can have a good time. And then there's the people who genuinely enjoy it. And
Yeah, it's like a spectrum. There's like, easier games that like won't take all night, but then there's like the more complicated strategy games that honestly could go on for like days. And
yeah,
then there's everything in between.
well, and most people you meet who say they don't like board games, particularly, they always have a story about that one person. And it's almost always a guy, and it's almost always like someone who loves board games that just ruined it for them and just made it awful. And I say, hey, like, don't be that person.
Yeah. We've all had that one night where someone's like, "Let's play this game. I promise it's really easy," and then it takes like 30 minutes to explain the rules, and then you do something wrong, and they're like, "Nope, that's an exception," and you're like, "You said this was easy."
Well, it's either that or just the person who gets way too serious and intense.
Yeah, too competitive. But I've gotten into Catan like the last couple of years. I never thought I would, but I just thought it was too complicated for me. And then I played and was like, this is actually really fun. Who knew?
Well, it's the ultimate game of like, some people can really suck to play that game with. And if you're going to like, but you can have so much fun if you almost always, you have to have a bottle of wine open, pouring, and like the right attitude. And sometimes that one person is just going to get a lot of the levens, and it sucks that it's happening to you, and maybe they block your road, but who cares, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's a game,
Exactly.
Yeah, you gotta like balance that line of like caring enough so that it's actually competitive and fun, but not too much that you alienate all of your friends and become that guy.
Exactly.
So gotten to know you a little bit, learned what you like to do around LA and where you've lived, but we're here to talk about dating ultimately. So I guess to start, what are you looking for at the moment in terms of like the kind of relationship you want, either now or long-term or both? Where are you at?
Yeah, funny, I think I've hit a really good place in some sense where I think the best place to start a relationship is where you're happy single and you're like, I don't need someone to turn my life around. I don't need someone to like change anything in my life. But like in my mind, the first thing about a good relationship is that it makes the best things in your life maybe a little bit better. And I think when we were talking earlier about, say, like running the marathon, for example, and I mentioned like having your parents there and having the right relationship where you celebrate each other's achievements. In some sense, you actually have twice as many achievements because, or maybe more than twice if you're dating someone really successful. But regardless, it's you can kind of share in that together. And my experience in some of the happiest places I've been in relationships is when something really good happens to you and you just can't wait to tell that person because they're going to be genuinely happy for you and you can share that with them together. So that's kind of like a starting point for me. I think that I have my things I like my board games, I like my hiking, I like to read and run, and maybe you find a relationship where you can share those things with people. Maybe you don't. I wouldn't say like any of those things like really truly matter at like the outset of when you're trying to find a relationship. Like I've dated people who've liked all of those things and none of those things, and it doesn't really reflect, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that are fun and that you can do together in a good relationship that maybe you just wouldn't go to yourself. Like, I don't know. I'm not going out on weekends to an art museum, but like, do I think going with somebody who I really care about and I can have a good time and talk about art with would be fun? Yeah, I do. I think it would be a cool thing to do. And if they enjoyed it and I could like share in that with them. So that's like, I think my starting point to how I approach things. It's someone you can have fun with that maybe pushes you a little bit out of your shell, and that challenges you to take risks, do things that like scare you, but that, you can spend a good day at home with as well and just enjoy their company. And
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's a really good outlook and like really good place to be coming at dating from. Do you have so I think it's great that you're open to either meeting someone who loves all the same things as you do, but doesn't have to. But I guess if the connection of the relationship is most important to you, are there certain like qualities in another person you look for? Like I know you mentioned someone who brings you out of your shell. Are you interested in someone more outgoing, or are there certain qualities that are like absolute must-haves for you in terms of who you date?
Yeah, I think it's funny, and like the first thing, and I think particularly from a dating app standpoint, the first thing I always think about with somebody when I meet them for the first time is, what does their laugh sound like? How easy does the laugh come out? And it's like,
Nice.
how genuine is it's? Sorry, it feels a little cliche now that I'm saying that out loud, but like,
No, I like it. It's really sweet.
but so yeah, that like laugh easily, and that I think I've made a bit of a journey. I've become more extroverted as I've gotten older.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe taken more risks, push myself in more ways that struggle. And I love my Harry Potter. I'll always call myself like a Ravenclaw, and like that, like in the books in my little corner, and I have my stuff, and I can entertain myself and
Mm-hmm.
enjoy my alone time. But I like someone that kind of pushes me in the opposite direction to, again, go beyond what would be really easy for me and push me to be more outgoing, do things that scare me. That's what I'm trying to push myself to do. And it's both like, you can't sit here saying like, oh, when I find that person, then I'll do those things, because that's not a way to be successful. But it's good to, the people you surround yourself with push you in different directions. I think a big thing for me moving to LA, and was something my friend said as well, when I had a friend who joined a startup a few years before me, and I'm kind of going off topic a little bit here, but I was like, who even founds a company? Like, I don't know, like I'm living in DC working at this huge company. I don't know who founds a company. It's like, honestly, I didn't either. But then you meet people and you start to surround yourself with people, and you start to maybe find a little bit more of that within yourself, and it starts to push you in that direction.
Yeah.
And I'm not tactical about the people I surround myself with. I'm not looking for people that do something like that. But when I think about the best parts and the best relationships that just feel right for the longest periods of time in my past, it's those people that make you uncomfortable in all the best ways, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you said it was off topic, but I actually think that's a really great analogy. Like being an entrepreneur, like not everyone is, but when you surround yourself with people who are, it brings out a different side to you. And we're not saying that Gabe just wants to date entrepreneurs, just for the record, but I think that's a good way to look at it. Yeah, that's awesome.
No, I was like, it's like the first time I've been bungee jumping twice, for example. I was the kid who never wanted to go on roller coasters, who was always like, this is scary, and why would I do that? Like, you're just scaring yourself for no reason. And my brother is more of a risk taker than I am. And when I'm with him, it's infectious. It rubs off on you, and you're like, okay, let's put this together and let's just do it and see what happens. And that's the best part about being surrounded by different people, I think.
Well, hang on. Let's dive into that for a sec. No pun intended. But how was bungee jumping?
I've always said, like, when you're falling and that point where you hit the bottom and you start coming up like that, like, there's a sense of euphoria within you, which is almost like the best feeling I've ever experienced in my life.
Wow.
That, like,
and you're someone who doesn't like roller coasters, so that's actually like.
And I mean, I can reference all my favorite movie quotes about fear and like getting through it, and it feels good to say, hey, that was like really scary and I did it anyway. It says a lot about different things in your life you could do as well. If you throw yourself off a cable car or a bridge or whatever you're doing, and you're like, damn, okay, I threw myself off a bridge, like, whether I can walk over there and ask that girl out, or I can change jobs or ask for a raise or whatever it is in your life. That was like, no, it's not throwing yourself off a bridge. So
yeah, you're like, and I've done that and I survived. Yeah. It was actually amazing.
Yeah. And
That's
so,
awesome.
I don't know. The first time I went, there was a quote from a book that I was reading at the time, and the guy was always like, better to do it than live with the fear of it. And that kind of that was my first bungee jump quote that like, I was like, all right, this can apply to a lot of life, and I'm just going to be a cliche and go around.
I love that. What book was that? That's a great quote.
It was a series called The First Law, fantasy series.
Okay.
I won't go. It's a dark fantasy, kind of Game of Thrones-esque in some sense. And
okay, sounds like you found that quote right when you needed it.
Exactly.
Getting ready to bungee jump, Yeah,
and now we're going.
Well, while we're talking about wild experiences, how about we do some wild card questions?
Let's do some wild cards.
So we haven't talked very much about your current job. I know you mentioned you work in fintech. I'm sure you love it, and especially if your employers are listening to this, he loves it, loves the job. But if you could do anything else and like get as wacky as you want, what would you do and why?
Yeah. Okay. So I've separated this into two. One is the like, this actually might happen, and the one is like, this is actually probably not going to happen, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so this could happen, and I hope my career goes in this direction. I'd love to be a high school teacher. I think it would be really fun to teach. The dream is we're teaching economics, be a football coach, played football in high school. I think I could do both. I have some like thought or vision of going back to my high school or just finding any high school and setting up. I don't know. There's something about teaching at the high school level where, I don't know, your job is you have that first push on, you can inspire someone to go in that direction and say, hey, this is what you're teaching is like really cool. And like the direction that you're going in, I don't think there's enough high school classes that start and spend a week about like, okay, before we talk about AP tests or the basics, we're going to just spend a week talking about why this subject is awesome. And I've always wanted to do that. So that's my like realistic. I think I'm going to make that happen, sort of like path in life. My unrealistic / I don't think that I took the right life paths to go in this direction, but we'll see is as I would love to be the mayor of the first human city on Mars.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I want to hear more about this, but I feel like the fact that you even want to is like all you really need at this point to make that happen.
It would kind of be an adventure like nothing else that you never do. And, I talk about doing things that scare you or that are like really hard and that take everything you got to accomplish. And that would be like hard. But in everything you do, whether, you got a civilization like that or everything you do is for the survival of everybody around you, whether you're farming or sitting in meetings or, taking out the trash. Like it's all important. The settlement dies if anything fails. If you be part of that community.
If there is trash on Mars, like who knows? Do they have meetings on Mars? I don't know.
I don't either. I don't know what that settlement looks like, but like it's both, you kind of get my science fiction dream, but also it feels really important, challenging, and meaningful in all those ways. And you can really build something. So anyway, that's my far off dream job. Both,
I love it. And I know you said it's science fiction, but I think it's going to happen in our lifetime. I don't know. You agree?
Yeah, I do think so. And I wonder, if when you talk about whether it's crazy vacations or when you talk about like the next frontier and like where people are going who want to restart and think about new paths in their life, whether that's the moon or Mars or wherever else. And the part in me that like wants that adventure and to tread on a path that like few people have tread on.
And I mean, it's not like you would necessarily have to have any political experience in your background because you would just be like inventing a government from scratch.
Yeah.
You know, like.
Worst comes to worst, I'll just go in and set up like stakes somewhere uninhabited on the planet, and I'll be like, mayor of a city of one, and
yeah, like this is my town, and you can live here, or you don't have to, but these are my rules.
Yeah.
I think you can do it. I believe in you.
I appreciate that.
You'll have to come back and tell us what you learned when that happens.
Yeah, or I'll just send you all an invite and just
love to. I'm
best
in.
run city and that humanity has.
Honestly, it probably would be. The bar is low. So kind of similar science fiction question. If you could time travel, when and where would you go? And that could be like an era, that can be a specific event. It obviously could be somewhere in the future. What's the first thing that comes to mind?
I'd say the first thing that comes to mind, and it's kind of building off of the same sort of thing, is like the first pilgrims coming to the United States, or not the United States, to America, and on the Mayflower and coming, and you both think of like everything they built, and also what went wrong with Native Americans and with both the good and the bad, and being part of that. I think that's like that's the very first thing that came to my mind, and the sort of thing that would be like really fun to go into experience. I think I'd love to meet those people and see what that was like. Obviously, then like the future has its really strong appeals as well. I'm trying to think about like, there's nothing like what specifically in the future would, outside of my like travel dreams or whatnot, like
and your mayorship on Mars.
Yeah, exactly. What I really want to see. So we'll focus on that past one. It feels more concrete, and yeah.
So my second follow-up question to that is: would you go back as and like want to like blend in as a fellow pilgrim, or would you like be someone from the future who's like showing them technology from 2024 and like have you seen those memes? It's like, imagine explaining this to a pilgrim.
Oh my gosh, I have these like thoughts about either going to like a different world or the past and being like, oh wow, all these things, like how does a car work? And I'm like,
and pilgrims would be like, car, like what?
Yeah. Or even worse, they'd be like, oh, I know exactly what this is, how do I build it? And I'm like, I have no idea.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think I imagine, I don't think it's like being from the future, and I think it's like genuinely living it as the people did. I think living it with some influence or impetus to be able to like drive something important sounds.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone like imagines going back and being a Joe Schmo and or going in the future and being a Joe Schmo, but like I do think that coming back from the future, at the end of the day, I don't think I'd be that useful to the people back then.
I don't think I would either. I would be like, I rely too much on technology and I don't know how to build anything. So
exactly, yeah, yeah.
And I don't know how to cook without like a stove. And
yeah, I don't know if anybody needs help setting up lending products in the 17th century. Yeah. So they probably would have arrested me for usury. So no, guess
like,
not.
I would just be there as an observer, just kind of tagging along. Nice. So this is one that's a little bit more personal. I know you told us about bungee jumping, so let's like not count this one if this would be your answer. But what would you say is your favorite story about yourself?
Favorite story about myself? Oh, this is one of those moments where I'm like, I know I have stories, but it's not going to be.
I can ask you again if you want to think about it for a second.
It's not going to be me jumping off things. And I have a funny, in some sense, like this is actually silly, but I was traveling with a friend and we got lost on the trip. There was a whole thing, and got to the city we were going to probably about 11 at night, and we need to fill the car up. And so we're looking at the car manual, and we're like, does this car take diesel or gas? And the manual wasn't in English, and sitting there and trying to figure it out. And so we decided on putting in diesel in the car.
Okay.
I think putting diesel in a gas car isn't good. Putting gas in a diesel car is really bad.
Yeah. So
And
like
so we
this
put
is the
diesel
word
in.
less bad of the two.
Yeah. Moral of the story, they're both bad because it was a gas car. And we drive for like a mile and the car just stops. And like we're in the middle of the road, and like we were in Switzerland. And so middle of the road, car stopped. We know we've done something wrong. This is one of my best friends. And in some sense, it's really easy to start getting really upset and like blaming each other. It sort of derailed the trip for a while there because we lost the car. We had to get towed. We had to go through all this stuff. And then we end up with this like 1995 BMW 1 Series stick shift. I'm trying to I haven't driven manual in like 2 or 3 years.
Oh my!
And I'm trying to like test it out. With like the Alps and these hairpin turns, but like it's.
Oh my God!
I look back on that really fondly because we made a lot of that, and it's actually like it's a pretty formative moment in our friendship. As like we both like to tell the story because we were both glad we were there together, and in some sense, that's when you talk about hard moments, and like it was good that it was something we fought through, and we're going to tell the story about going there and still made it happen, still did the hike we wanted to do. We had to like race up before the sunset, and
wow. Well, yeah, my main question was going to be, did your friendship survive? Because that could be a make or break situation. You either get a lot closer after something like that, or your friendship is over after the trip.
Well, it did, and there's so many things in life. It's so easy to start blaming each other for certain things that go wrong, and I don't know. There's enough stress with different things in life than just like start, even if you're both like stupid. I mean, we were pretty dumb, but like
it doesn't sound dumb to me if you don't read the language that the car manual is in. I mean, what are you supposed to do?
Yeah, this was solvable. But in a lot of ways, it was like, we could have taken different steps, and including filling up in the morning. But it's so easy to let stuff like that ruin a day, a week, a friendship. And so I like that moment because we're still best friends, and we count on each other, and now we just say, hey, like, if we did that, we fought through that, we can do anything together, right? And so we did that trip, and a couple of years later, I really wanted to go to Antarctica, and he was the first friend I thought of, and it was like, hey, you want to do something wild, like different, like let's go do this, and I knew he was in for it, so yeah.
And you went to Antarctica?
Did go to Antarctica.
Oh my God, what was that like? Now I'm like off the wild card questions. I just want to know about that.
It was pretty amazing. Penguins are so cool.
Oh my God.
They're not afraid.
Were they everywhere like I imagine they are in Antarctica? Or is that...
No, you go to places and they're like everywhere. And
that's amazing.
They're like the adult penguins, they just don't care about people. But the babies are curious and they come up and they try to like, eat your shoes and like...
Oh my God.
They're adorable. They're great, and you're just there with the whales and the seals. And we got chased by a leopard seal once, which was kind of scary and fun.
Oh my God.
Yeah. You're sitting there in kayaks and the humpbacks are coming up. Anyway, it's like, it was a cool thing to do. It was a kind of random thing to do, but like, anyway, it was an adventure.
That sounds amazing. I mean, not a lot of people like are brave enough to do that. Like, I think it would be cool, but if I actually were given the prospect of going there, I would be terrified, but it sounds amazing. And I love penguins. So maybe I will go.
Yeah. And otherwise there's more accessible places you can find penguins too that are pretty cool. You can
That's true. But if I'm going to go for it, just going to lean in.
See it all, yeah.
Cool. So Gabe, we talked a little bit about sort of what you're looking for in terms of a partnership, but are there certain qualities or like attributes in a woman you end up with that you really admire or that you're looking for?
I think the thing I admire most in a woman probably is just in some sense a woman who kicks ass. I don't know, like I think that the best things about a partnership are you have just like loads of respect for somebody, and then there are times where maybe like you need them and then they need you, and so it's gonna be some combination of just like admiration but like vulnerability at the same time, and how do you have like both sides in that sort of person. And so the more so like I admire someone the most who isn't scared by the world and is kind of meeting it every day of their life, but also has friends and hopefully has me to fall back on and to like meet all those obstacles with them. And then so I can try and meet them and be in the same place, and to both like inspire them and be there for them and lean on them at the same time.
Yeah. So it sounds like that sort of balance that we were talking about before of like, like respect, but also being able to be vulnerable and ask for help but have that sort of like balance. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah. And it's because honestly, it's something I struggle with a little bit, and actually with my best friends. And I think I mentioned in the conversation that it's easier to have this conversation with you as mostly a stranger than it would be to have it with a good friend, because it's hard to be vulnerable with somebody who you really care about, like their opinion of you, right? And
totally.
to go in and talk about the struggles that you've had. And it's funny, I think one of the things that's been a challenge for me, it's been different for me dating, I think, over the last, like I'd say, if you take me now versus me 10, 15 years ago when I was first dating, I'm a much happier person than I am right now. But like the person that was me, 10 years ago found it easier to be vulnerable, to confide, because emotions were turmoil and like lots were going on. Now I feel happy and put together, but like you start to see yourself in that happy and put together way, and you don't want anybody, especially the people you care about most, to see that like part of you that's not put together, and the part of you that's struggling and that struggles all the time. And the formative moments for my best friendships are places where we've confided in each other and said things that were hard for us and struggled with. And in some sense, like a good relationship has to go that direction. And like, maybe that's really like to love, maybe that's like the deepest part, but that like, on date one, you want to say like, wow, this woman's awesome. Like, I'm so happy and I just want to see her again and again. On day like 365, you want to say like, I can lean on her and tell her what troubles me, and I know she's still going to respect me, and that goes the other direction.
Yeah. Wow, that is deep, because I've been there with like that like feeling of not wanting to have your friends and like those closest to you see the hard parts. I mean, that's hard to show that side to people that care about you. So
yeah.
So finding someone that you can do that with,
because no one wants to be sitting there a year into a relationship either feeling like you got to hide the insecure parts of yourself. That's not successful. You also like you got to be able to take a road trip together without talking the whole time, right? You got to just say like, hey, like, I'm not talking and you're not talking, but it still feels really natural to be together.
Right. Like we don't need to fill the silence every. Yeah. No, that's really nice. Nailed it. So before we close out, this is my, I like to end every eligible in interview with this question, but if you were able to tell your future partner anything, whether it's conveying some advice to them or just something you want them to know? Is there anything you'd want to say to them now?
I feel like I've almost like repeated myself in saying this is an adventure and that's an adventure, and whether it's going on a trip or living somewhere else or just life in general, I think that there's when you're dating you start to hit your 30s, your late 20s, and most people have gone through something. Most people have thought they found someone, have maybe had their heart broken, maybe met like not so great a person and had gone through that. But like, it's all part of that journey. And at the end of the day, when you look back on it, I hope it's like so many things that you say, wow, like this is where life is right now. And I'm so freaking glad about everything that happened that got me here, because like we're here together. And so I think that's what I'd say to I'm grateful for everything that happened to me and everything that happened to you that brought us together. And I'm really excited about the journey in the future.
That's beautiful. Oh, I can't believe you just came up with that. That's lovely. All right. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us. Hopefully you'll come back on, tell us how you're doing down the line.
Thanks for listening to Eligible In, a production of Eligible In Media. Our theme song is by Monster Rally. If you see someone you like on our show, or if you would like to nominate yourself or someone you love to be interviewed by us, please visit us at eligiblein.com for more information, including a link to subscribe to our newsletter, where you can stay up to date on our newest episodes, as well as exclusive features of our eligible people.
Lovely you.